Today, we're going to be going over a wheelchair rugby, some of the history of it, and how the game is played. Let's begin. Wheelchair rugby was founded in 1976 by 5 Canadian wheelchair basketball athletes. Originally, it was called murderball, and murderball was introduced to the United States then in 1979. The first American team was called the Wall Bangers. Then in the late 80s, the sport was renamed from murderball to wheelchair rugby or quad rugby, depending upon in what nation or state you were playing. It was said that murderball wasn't exactly as approachable of a title for a sport for all to participate in, maybe not as marketable for sponsors as well. That is why they say they renamed it. Then in 1993, the sport is recognized as an official international sport for athletes with a disability. It is said that the game was created for those that didn't necessarily love basketball, or their disability put them in a position where basketball wasn't the ideal sport for them to play, as well as they wanted a sport that was a little bit more full contact by nature and aggressive. And as you can see in this picture, two men are colliding into each other with their unique murder ball slash wheelchair rugby wheelchairs. And that is how the game's oftentimes played, with colliding into one another constantly. The targeted population for murder ball or wheelchair rugby, male or female, must have some form of disability with a loss of function in both the upper limbs as well as lower limbs, which is oftentimes known as quadriplegia or tetraplegia. The majority of wheelchair rugby athletes have cervical vertebrae spinal cord injuries. And you can look at this picture off to the right here, which is the levels of injury and extent of paralysis. Typically, when you have a injury to the higher levels of your spinal cord, i.e., the cervical area, that's going to render a greater level of paralysis to the rest of the body. And the lower the injury to the spinal cord, results in a lower level of paralysis to the body. So cervical or neck injury usually results in tetraplegia or quadriplegia. Other potential eligible players may have conditions such as multiple amputations, polio, cerebral palsy, or muscular dystrophy. The sport is not limited to exclusively these disabilities, but these are the most common. The other photos you see here is a young man named Cameron Clapp. Cameron was actually a school friend of mine. We went to middle school and then high school together. When we were both sophomores, he was hit by a train and became a triple amputee boy. So he had both his legs amputated above the kneecap, and his right dominant arm amputated just past the shoulder. So he went on to do incredible things, as you can see in this in these images, being active, and he was also he's also a spokesperson for his prosthetics, and has gone and been in movies as well as television shows, competed in an array of different types of sports, triathlons, and is a just kind of a symbol of what can be accomplished, despite what others might seem think to be horrendous disabilities that would put you render you inactive for the rest of your life. I don't believe that murder ball would be a good sport for him, be it that his one of his arms is amputated so high it would prevent him from being able to maneuver the chair very well. But as I said, he's accomplished great things outside of murder ball. Rugby versus wheelchair rugby. The differences between these two sports are many, with one of the only commonalities being the aggressive full contact nature of each sport. Wheelchair rugby is played on a hardwood basketball court, 28 meters long by 15 meters wide. Points are acquired by carrying the ball. It's similar to volleyball, and oftentimes it's played with a volleyball across the other team's goal line. There are 4 players from each team on the court at a time, and there are actually 2 types of players. You're either a defensive player or a offensive player, and the chairs that they actually utilize are different in size and shape based on the position that they're going to be playing while on the court. So on to rugby, or traditional rugby. The original version of rugby is played with an oval-shaped rugby ball, also like a football, American football that is, on a turf or grass field that is 100 meters by 70 meters. The ball can only be passed backwards. 15 players from each team on the field at a time. Points are acquired when running the ball into the in-goal area or kicking it through the crossbars. So there is many differences between the 2 sports, but like I said, the aggressive nature is really the main commonality. So that is the 2 sports pitted against another. One of the primary differences between the sports is obviously the wheelchair that is used. And the rugby wheelchair in itself is unique to other wheelchairs. You're not going to see a rugby wheelchair on the street as an individual with movement limitations using as their daily driver. It is oftentimes customized for the individual athlete. It has a reinforced frame to support the high velocity impacts that they're constantly enduring. It has a spoke protecting plate that protects the spokes as to ensure that they don't get banged or render the wheels inoperable. Also probably a good idea so that you don't like wedge a finger or something in a spoke when you're colliding into one another. And then the wheels are angled as to create a larger base of support, limiting tipping over of the chair, but the chairs get tipped over all the time if you watch any footage of the sport. So once again, the chairs differ from offensive players to defensive players. On the bottom left, you see a offensive chair, which is doesn't have a elongated front, so it can maneuver more quickly, make tighter turns, and then you see a somewhat version of the defensive chair to the far right, and it has this like kind of cattle grate at the front. It's elongated, and that's so you can collide into the offensive players and kind of gum them up, make them less capable of moving around on the court. So yes, the rugby chair is the primary difference between the 2 sports. Classification style. The classification is going to be, the players are given a classification according to their level of function and disability. Lowest classification is 0.05 up to the highest highest at 3.5. So lower numbers are going to mean a lower level of functionality or ability for the athletes, and then the higher points is going to mean the individual has a greater level of deliberate capability of maneuvering their extremities. So a team may have a maximum of 8 points on the floor at any one time. And that's kind of their choice to deem how they want to mix and match their different ability members on the team at any given time. Classification adds another dimension to the game for the coaches. The game relies heavily on the development of the rules for players, and in many ways is the ultimate team sport. So you see the American team off to the, oh no, that's the Canadian team, I believe, off to the left bottom of this picture right here. And then off to the right, we have a picture of a movie that came out in the early 2000s called Murderball. It was a documentary of the sport and the American team. It had rave reviews. It was a really fun movie. I watched it when it came out. The main star of the player of the team, showcased here, his last name was Zupan. He later was in, I think, like a Jackass movie. But the movie itself, Murderball, it's really powerful, and it gives a wonderful backstory to the different athletes and some of their stories, and the different individuals' limitations that they had, and showing that they're regular fellas capable of doing incredible things within their own sport. So Murderball, the movie, is worth a watch, most definitely. So how I am going to apply the concept of adaptive sports into my future career. I am going into physical education and looking to specialize in adaptive physical education. So it's going to play a large role. It may be difficult for me to create a Murderball team or wheelchair rugby team, be it that the wheelchairs are so unique, as well as most schools don't have a heap of wheelchairs on hand. But I fully anticipate utilizing maybe some of the stories from Murderball to reach maybe the students that don't have disabilities, and give them a little bit of background on what an individual that may be perceived disabled can actually do, and how they're absolutely no different than a general population individual. Yeah, that's good enough. So, and stop share, stop record.